I trusted my best friend to keep my secret, but she betrayed me by exposing it to everyone for her own gain. I had always been the type of person who valued trust above all else. I wasn't one to open up easily, and it took me a long time to build relationships where I felt safe enough to be vulnerable. But when I met Emma, it was different. She was one of those rare people who made you feel like you could tell them anything, and they would never judge you. We met during our first year of college, and our friendship quickly blossomed into something deeper than I had expected. We laughed about the same jokes, shared our dreams, and confided in each other about everything, from family struggles to personal fears. In her, I found not just a friend, but someone who felt like family. There was a time when I believed nothing could come between us. After all, we had spent hours talking about the future, the kind of people we wanted to become, and the support we'd give each other along the way. Emma had been there for me during some of the hardest moments of my life, when my parents' marriage was falling apart, when I faced academic challenges, and even when I had my first heartbreak. She was the one I turned to, and I thought she would always be there. But one day, something happened that shattered that trust forever. It all started when I confided in Emma about a deeply personal secret that had been eating away at me for months. I had been carrying it alone for so long, too afraid to tell anyone, worried that they would see me differently. But Emma was my best friend, and I thought she was the one person who would understand. We had always promised each other that no matter what, our secrets would stay safe between us. I had been struggling with an eating disorder for the better part of a year, something I had never shared with anyone. It wasn't something I was proud of, and it had taken a toll on me both physically and mentally. I had been battling with food, my weight, and my self-image in silence, pretending like everything was fine on the outside when inside, I was falling apart. I hadn't even told my family. I was ashamed. But one night, while we were hanging out at her apartment, the weight of it all became too much. I had been struggling to hold it together, and after a long day of pretending that everything was fine, I finally broke down in front of her. I was crying, unable to speak at first, but Emma sat beside me, patiently waiting. She didn't push me to talk, but eventually, the words came spilling out. I told her everything: the shame, the guilt, the constant battle in my mind, and how I was terrified of what would happen if anyone found out. I didn't expect her to have all the answers, but I needed her to know. She listened without interruption, her eyes full of concern but not judgment. I could tell she genuinely cared, and that was all I needed. I thought I had made the right choice in telling her. I thought I had finally found someone who would be there for me without judgment, someone who would keep my secret safe. I was wrong. The next few weeks were a blur. I didn't notice anything unusual at first. We continued our routine, our late-night study sessions, movie marathons, and deep talks about life. I thought that, despite the heaviness of the secret I had shared, Emma and I were as close as ever. But then, something strange started happening. One evening, I walked into the student lounge to find Emma in a heated conversation with a few other classmates. They were all laughing, and at first, I thought nothing of it. But as I drew closer, I noticed that they were looking at me, their smiles a little too wide, their laughter a little too forced. "Hey, we were just talking about your dieting habits," one of them, Kate, said with a smirk. "You really should tell us more about that." I froze, my blood running cold. Dieting habits? What was she talking about? I had never talked about anything like that with Kate or anyone else. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross her features before she quickly masked it with a smile. "Oh, we were just messing around," she said, her voice too casual. "Don't mind us." But I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Something wasn't right. I had never once mentioned my eating disorder to anyone else, let alone Emma's other friends. And now, Kate, someone I barely knew, was making a joke about it. My mind raced as I pieced it together, but the only conclusion I could come to was the one I dreaded. Emma had told them. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face the fact that the person I trusted most had betrayed me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was no other explanation. Emma had told them my secret. And worse, she had shared it in a way that made it feel like a joke. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I tried to laugh it off, tried to pretend that nothing had changed, but the hurt was already deep inside me. That night, I confronted Emma. I needed answers. "Emma, what the hell is going on?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of confusion and anger. "Why did Kate bring up my eating habits? Did you tell her about it?" Her face paled, And for a moment, she said nothing. She looked guilty, and that was all I needed to know. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought it would help if they knew. I thought they'd be supportive." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "You told them?" "Without asking me. Without even giving me a chance to decide. You knew how much this meant to me, Emma. You promised me that my secret would stay safe." Her eyes welled with tears, and she reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. "I'm so sorry. I thought it would make things better," she repeated. "I thought they could help you. I didn't think it would get back to you like this." "Help me," I repeated, my voice rising. "You thought telling them would help me? You've humiliated me, Emma. You've made my deepest, darkest secret something to laugh about. This isn't just about you thinking it would help. You broke my trust." She didn't say anything for a long moment. I could see the regret on her face, but it didn't change anything. She had exposed me in a way that I couldn't undo. The damage was done. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to yell, to tell her how much she had hurt me, but instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of her betrayal pressed down on me. She had crossed a line I never thought she would, and now, I wasn't sure if our friendship would ever be the same again. The days following my confrontation with Emma felt like an emotional fog. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Classes, homework, even my friends. Everything felt like a blur. The pain of her betrayal was so raw that I couldn't escape it. I felt like I was walking through a nightmare, watching everything fall apart. The person I trusted most in the world, the one I had confided in about my deepest secret, had thrown that trust away as if it meant nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the moment in the lounge when Emma's friends laughed about my eating habits, the way I had been reduced to a joke. I kept asking myself how I had been so blind. How could I have not seen it coming? And more than that, how could Emma, someone I thought was my closest friend, do this to me? I had trusted her with something so vulnerable. I had told her when I was at my lowest, believing that she would keep it safe. Instead, she turned it into a conversation for other people to talk about, a spectacle for others to judge. I thought our friendship meant more than that. The following days were filled with tension. I saw Emma in passing around campus, but we didn't speak. Every time our paths crossed, I felt like I was suffocating. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of what had happened and the deeper wound that I was trying to heal. I didn't know how to fix it, or if it could even be fixed. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, but I didn't have the words. I just felt hollow. I started avoiding Emma as much as possible. I didn't want to be around her. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want to feel that gnawing anxiety whenever she was nearby. I withdrew from our shared spaces, our apartment, the dining hall, even the group study sessions we used to enjoy together. I felt like I needed to escape, but the truth was, there was no place where I could fully escape from what had happened. As much as I wanted to cut Emma out of my life completely, the reality was more complicated. We lived together, after all. We shared a space, our routines, and our daily lives. Avoiding her wasn't a long-term solution, but neither was pretending that everything was okay. A week later, Emma approached me in the hallway. I could see the guilt written all over her face, but also a hint of defensiveness. She was trying to justify her actions, trying to make it right in her own mind, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear her excuses. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. I didn't answer at first. I didn't want to say anything that would give her the chance to make me feel guilty for the way I was reacting. I had every right to be upset, but I also knew that she wouldn't understand if I just shut her out completely. As much as I didn't want to hear her explanation, I knew I needed to, for my own peace of mind. "Fine," I said flatly, crossing my arms. "But I don't think I'm going to like what you have to say." She sighed, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You know that, right?" I let out a dry laugh, feeling the bitterness in my throat. "No, I don't know that. You did hurt me, Emma. I trusted you with something so personal, something that I was ashamed of, and you made it into a joke. You told people who didn't need to know. You told people who then used my secret to make fun of me. I didn't think it would get out of hand," she said quickly. "I thought they would just be supportive. I thought they'd understand, but it's not like that. It wasn't supposed to go this far." I shook my head. "You didn't think it would get out of hand? You didn't think about what it would mean for me to have other people know about something I was still struggling with? Emma, you humiliated me. You didn't protect me. You betrayed me. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought it would help. I thought they could understand, that they would be there for you like I was, but I see now that I was wrong." I felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the depth of my own hurt. "The thing is, Emma, you didn't just tell them because you thought they could help me. You told them because you wanted to feel like you were in control. You wanted to be the one who knew, the one who had the secret. And that's not friendship." I paused, trying to collect myself, trying to find the right words. "You didn't just break my trust, you made my personal struggles public. You made me feel like I wasn't worth protecting. And that's the part that really hurts. I can't just forget that." She nodded, biting her lip, clearly torn. "I get it. I do. I'm sorry for what I did, and I understand if you don't want to talk to me right now. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you. I thought it would help." "Well, it didn't help. It made everything worse. I don't think I can forgive you, not right now. You broke something I don't know how to fix. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." She didn't say anything after that. I could see she was hurt, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. The damage had been done, and no amount of apologies could undo what had happened. I knew I needed space to process everything, to figure out if I could ever trust her again, and right now, I didn't have the answer. As I turned to walk away, I felt a wave of emptiness wash over me. This wasn't just the end of a friendship. This was the end of something that had been so important to me. I had lost the one person I thought I could always turn to, the one person I thought would never hurt me. I didn't know what the future held for Emma and me, but right now, I needed to be away from her. I needed to take back control of my life. And if that meant distancing myself from the person I had once considered my best friend, then that's what I had to do. The road ahead would be long, but I knew one thing. I would never let someone break my trust like this again. The days after the conversation with Emma felt like walking through fog. The words we had exchanged, the things I had said, echoed in my mind with each step I took. I had hoped that by confronting her, I'd find some closure, some sense of peace, but instead, I was left with an emptiness that I couldn't shake. The betrayal was so deep, and I couldn't seem to outrun the hurt. Every time I saw her on campus or ran into her in the dorm, my stomach twisted. I knew it was inevitable. We had to figure out what came next, but I had no idea how to move forward. What hurt the most wasn't just the exposure of my eating disorder. It wasn't even the fact that Emma had betrayed my trust. It was the realization that I had shared my most vulnerable self with someone who didn't truly respect or understand what that meant. In one fell swoop, Emma had taken something that I had worked so hard to keep hidden and made it into a topic for other people to gossip about. What was supposed to be a safe place, a safe friendship, had turned into something that had left me feeling exposed, weak, and humiliated. For the next few days, I kept my distance. I needed space, and not just from Emma, but from the whole situation. I couldn't look at her without feeling the weight of her betrayal. She had broken something in me, and I didn't know how to fix it. I started avoiding places where I knew she'd be, our usual study spots, the dining hall, even the campus coffee shop. I couldn't bear to see her face, let alone engage in a conversation. It wasn't even about the money or the fact that my secret had been exposed. It was the deeper emotional damage that stung more. But as much as I wanted to avoid Emma, I knew I had to face her eventually. I couldn't keep running away from the problem, and neither of us could continue pretending that everything was okay. Something had to change. Our friendship, or whatever was left of it, had to be addressed. But even now, I wasn't sure I was ready to rebuild. I wasn't sure I could ever trust her again. That day came sooner than I expected. It was a Wednesday evening, and I had just returned to the dorm after a long day of classes. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and just wanted to crawl into bed and forget everything. But when I opened the door to our room, I saw Emma sitting at the desk. Her head was down, and she was writing something. The tension in the air was palpable, and my heart started racing. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. I froze at the doorway, my body stiffening with a mix of anger and apprehension. I had known this moment would come eventually, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be. I didn't answer at first. I just stood there, trying to gauge how I felt. I wanted to say something cutting, something to make her understand the depth of the pain she had caused. But I also knew that getting into another argument wouldn't change anything. I needed answers, and I needed closure. "What do you want to say, Emma?" I asked, my voice strained. She looked up from the desk, her eyes filled with regret. I owe you an apology, and I need to explain myself. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I was wrong. I should never have told anyone about your eating disorder. I should have kept that between us, just like I promised. I felt a flicker of something, maybe relief, but it was fleeting. Her apology didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like it was coming from a place of true understanding. It felt like something she was saying because she knew she had to. There was a difference between acknowledging you were wrong and truly understanding the hurt you caused. I don't know if an apology is enough, Emma, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. You didn't just tell people. You used my vulnerability as a way to fit in with your friends, to be the one with the secret. I trusted you, and you broke that trust. I don't know if I can ever get that back. Emma's face twisted with guilt, but she didn't interrupt. She let me speak, which, in a way, was all I needed from her. I wasn't looking for an excuse, for her to try to explain her way out of what she had done. I just needed her to listen. I needed her to know how deeply she had hurt me. You humiliated me, I continued. You made me feel like my struggle wasn't worth respecting. You turned it into something that people laughed about behind my back. You put me in a position where I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Emma's eyes watered, and she wiped at her face with the back of her hand. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I promise I'll do anything to make it right. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to be better. I know I messed up, and I know I hurt you in a way that no apology will fix. But I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. I just want you to know that I am sorry, and that I'll never do anything like that again. I took a deep breath, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. I had been through so much in such a short amount of time that I wasn't sure if I had any more emotional energy left to give. But there was something in her voice, something raw and real, that made me pause. It was clear she was genuinely sorry. But that didn't change the fact that she had broken my trust, and that was something I wasn't sure could be fixed. I don't know, Emma, I whispered, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can keep going with this friendship. I thought you were my best friend. I thought you were someone I could trust no matter what. But you exposed my deepest fear to everyone, and I don't know how to come back from that. She was silent for a moment, and I could see the struggle in her eyes. I could tell she understood the gravity of what had happened. She wasn't trying to minimize it or make excuses anymore. She knew that what she had done was wrong. I don't know if you can forgive me either, she said softly, almost as if to herself. But I'm going to give you space. I won't pressure you to make any decisions right now. If you need time, take all the time you need. Just know that I am here for you if you ever want to talk. I nodded slowly, my emotions too tangled to express anything clearly. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I could keep her in my life or if I had to let go of the friendship entirely. The bond we had shared felt irreparably broken, and part of me wasn't sure it could ever be fixed. I just need time, I said, my voice small, barely above a whisper. I can't decide anything right now. Emma nodded, tears still in her eyes. I understand. I'll give you the space you need. I won't bother you anymore. Just, please know that I am sorry. I don't want to lose you. And with that, she stood up, her shoulders slumped in defeat, and left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat down on the bed, feeling drained. The pain was still there, the sting of betrayal still fresh. But I had asked for space, and now, it was time for me to take it. I knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. There were too many questions I still needed to answer, too many feelings I hadn't processed yet. But for now, all I could do was take a step back and figure out what I needed. I wasn't ready to forgive Emma, and I didn't know if I ever would be. But I knew I had to heal. I had to find my own peace before I could decide if she was worth keeping in my life. The days following my conversation with Emma felt like a balancing act. On one hand, I had made it clear that I needed time to process everything, but on the other, the silence between us was deafening. We had been inseparable for so long, and now there was this vast, uncomfortable distance between us. Emma's apology, as sincere as it seemed, hadn't been enough to heal the wound she had caused. She had broken my trust in a way that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened. I replayed the conversation we had in my mind, analyzing every word. Was Emma truly sorry, or was she simply trying to save face? It was hard to tell, and I wasn't sure if I would ever know the full extent of her motivations. What bothered me the most, though, was that I had let her in. I had given her the privilege of knowing my deepest secret, a part of me that I hadn't even fully accepted yet. And now, it felt like that part of me had been exposed and ridiculed by people who had no right to know it. But more than that, I was angry at myself. I was angry that I had allowed someone to breach my boundaries so easily. I had given Emma my trust without question, and now I was paying the price for it. Trust had always been difficult for me, but I had believed that Emma, my best friend, was different. She had earned that trust, or so I had thought. I realized now that I hadn't protected myself the way I should have. I had put my vulnerability in her hands, and she had used it to fit in with her friends. The anger I felt was overwhelming at times, and I found myself obsessing over the betrayal. Every time I saw Emma around campus, my heart would race. It was like I could feel the tension between us in the air, and I hated that it was there. I wanted things to go back to the way they were, but I knew that wasn't possible. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't forget what she had done, and even if I could, I wasn't sure I could ever trust her again. The thought of sharing something so personal with her again seemed impossible. As the weeks passed, I tried to focus on my own healing. I leaned into my studies, spending long hours in the library trying to distract myself from the constant thoughts of betrayal. I reconnected with other friends, ones who had always been supportive and understanding. They listened patiently as I vented about what had happened, offering me the perspective I needed to see things more clearly. Slowly, I started to feel less consumed by the pain. I knew I still had a long way to go, but each day felt like a small step toward healing. But the hardest part was still coming to terms with the fact that my friendship with Emma might be over. She had reached out several times, trying to talk, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I would ever be. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to let go of the anger and disappointment, but another part of me, one that I couldn't ignore, felt that I had to protect myself. I couldn't allow myself to fall back into the same patterns that had led to this point. I needed to prioritize my own well-being, and that meant putting up walls around my heart. One evening, a month after the incident, I found myself alone in my room, reflecting on how far I had come. It had been a difficult journey, but I was beginning to realize something important. Healing wasn't just about moving past the betrayal. It was about understanding why it hurt so much and learning how to protect myself going forward. I wasn't going to let Emma's mistake define me, nor was I going to let it dictate how I handled future relationships. It was during this period of reflection that I realized how much I had grown. The vulnerability that had once been my greatest weakness was now something I could embrace and protect. I had learned that trusting someone didn't mean blindly handing over everything. I needed to set boundaries, even with the people I loved the most. Trust had to be earned, not given freely. And while it was painful to acknowledge that Emma had violated my trust, it was also a crucial lesson that I needed to learn in order to protect myself moving forward. The following weekend, I decided to visit home. I hadn't seen my family in a few weeks, and I knew I needed their support. As much as I wanted to heal on my own, there was something about being surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally that brought me a sense of peace. My parents welcomed me with open arms, and we spent the weekend talking, catching up, and spending quality time together. They had no idea what I had been going through, but they could tell something was off. They didn't press me to talk, but I eventually found myself opening up to them about what had happened with Emma. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, sweetheart," my mom said, her voice full of concern. "But you're stronger than you realize. You'll get through this." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders just by talking to her. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. My family was there to support me, and they reminded me of my worth, something I had lost sight of in the aftermath of Emma's betrayal. The trip home also gave me some clarity. I realized that I had been so focused on the hurt caused by Emma that I had neglected the relationships that truly mattered. My family, my other friends, they were the ones who had always been there for me. They weren't perfect, but they respected my boundaries and never violated my trust. They loved me for who I was, not for the secrets I carried. That was the kind of support I needed. By the time I returned to campus, I felt more grounded. I had started to shift my perspective. I wasn't going to let Emma's actions define me. I wasn't going to let her betrayal dictate how I approached every relationship from now on. I was learning how to forgive myself for letting my guard down and how to build a foundation of trust that didn't rely on blind faith. I still wasn't ready to face Emma, But I was beginning to understand that I didn't need her approval or apology to heal. I could move on without her. I didn't need her validation to feel whole again. The healing was about me, not her. It wasn't easy, and I knew there were still moments when I would feel hurt and disappointment. But each day that passed made me stronger. I was slowly rebuilding my sense of self, learning to trust again, but more cautiously this time. And as I did, I realized that this experience, as painful as it was, had made me a better person. I was more aware of my own worth, and more committed to protecting my boundaries. The weeks after my visit home were a turning point. I had spent so much time in the emotional aftermath of Emma's betrayal, trying to make sense of what had happened and struggling with the deep hurt she had caused me. But now, as I settled back into my routine on campus, I started to feel the faintest sense of clarity. I knew the road to healing wasn't going to be linear. There would be moments when I would feel like I was making progress, only to be knocked back by a memory, a flash of anger, or the raw sting of betrayal. But I also knew something important. I couldn't let this situation consume me. I needed to move forward, slowly, cautiously, but with intention. I had begun taking small steps toward healing, focusing on myself and building stronger connections with the people who truly supported me. My friends, the ones who had never wavered in their loyalty, had been there for me without question. I started spending more time with them, enjoying simple moments of connection. We'd grab coffee together, talk about our classes, and share laughs without any underlying tension or discomfort. I realized that the people who were truly worth my time were the ones who respected my boundaries, never used my vulnerabilities against me, and never took my trust for granted. But the most important thing I was learning during this time was how to rebuild trust within myself. I couldn't blame myself for Emma's actions, though I had spent weeks doing just that. I had trusted her, yes, but she had chosen to betray that trust. That was her decision, not mine. I had to forgive myself for allowing her into my life, for letting my guard down, and for believing that everyone I let in would treat my vulnerability with respect. Trusting her wasn't a mistake. It was simply an unfortunate part of my journey, and I could choose not to let it define me. I couldn't hold on to the guilt forever. There were still moments when I would think about the conversation we had in our dorm room, when Emma's apology hung in the air, thick with regret and uncertainty. It had been a raw, difficult conversation, but I hadn't received the clarity I needed. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. And so, after some reflection, I made the decision to cut off all communication with her. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay between us when it wasn't. I couldn't keep trying to force a friendship that was no longer real. There was no animosity, no anger, no hatred, but there was a deep understanding that the relationship had changed beyond repair. I had to let go of what we had in order to heal. One evening, after days of thinking about what I needed to do, I finally texted Emma. I need to let go of our friendship for now. I need space to heal. I hope you understand. I didn't expect a response, and I wasn't sure if I wanted one. I had already made up my mind. My heart was heavy as I sent the message, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Emma had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed, and while I could eventually forgive her for what she had done, I needed to let go of the friendship, at least for the time being. The next day, Emma texted me back, though I wasn't sure how to process her words. She apologized again, profusely, and asked if we could talk. She said she missed our friendship, and that she was truly sorry for betraying my trust. But something about it felt forced, like she was trying too hard to fix things when the damage had already been done. It felt like she was reaching out on her terms, not mine. I didn't respond to her message. The decision had been made. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small sense of peace settle over me. I had done what I needed to do, even if it was hard. Even though I didn't know what the future would hold, I was starting to understand that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is let go. Let go of toxic relationships. Let go of the people who hurt you. And let go of the emotional burden of carrying other people's mistakes. I had been carrying Emma's betrayal for too long, and it was time to release it. As the semester wore on, I began to notice the subtle changes within myself. I was more confident, more sure of who I was, and less afraid to stand up for my own well-being. I stopped questioning myself for trusting Emma. I stopped allowing her mistake to define me. Instead, I focused on the relationships that mattered, my family, my true friends, and most importantly, myself. One day, a few months later, I was sitting with my best friend, Lily, at our favorite cafe. We were catching up on life, talking about everything and nothing, when I realized how much I had grown. A year ago, I would have never imagined being able to let go of someone like Emma, someone who had been such an important part of my life. But here I was, sitting with Lily, feeling stronger than I had in a long time. You know, I said, taking a sip of my coffee, I'm finally feeling like I'm in a good place. Like, really good. Lily smiled warmly. I'm so proud of you. You've been through a lot, and I can tell that you've learned a lot too. You've grown into someone who knows their worth, and that's a powerful thing. It felt good to hear those words. I knew I was still on my journey, still healing, but I had come so far. I had learned that healing wasn't just about moving past the hurt. It was about reclaiming your strength and making space for the people who truly deserve your trust and your love. I wasn't the same person I was before the betrayal, but in many ways, I was stronger, more resilient, and more aware of what I needed to protect my heart. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the healing process, and I realized that I was finally ready to move forward. I didn't need to hold on to the anger anymore. I didn't need to keep revisiting the past. What mattered now was what I was going to do with the future. I was no longer defined by Emma's actions. I wasn't going to let the way she treated me control the way I saw myself. I had learned to trust again, slowly, carefully, but I had learned how to set boundaries and protect my heart. I was stronger for it. And as I let sleep wash over me that night, I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next with the strength I had built through all the pain and the growth. I was ready for the future. Months passed, and as I moved through my final year of college, the weight of the past began to feel lighter. It wasn't that I had forgotten what Emma had done or that the betrayal no longer stung. It was just that I had learned to live with it, to carry it without letting it define me. The process of healing wasn't linear, but as time went on, I found peace in the spaces between the anger and disappointment. I had let go of the need to seek justice or an apology from Emma. Instead, I focused on the relationships that were still intact, the ones that hadn't been tainted by betrayal. I had learned a lot from the experience, not just about trust, but about myself. One of the most significant lessons I had learned during this time was the importance of boundaries. I had spent so much time in the past believing that trust meant giving someone everything, sharing all of myself, and being completely open. But the truth was, trust wasn't about revealing everything. It was about choosing the right people to trust, people who respected my boundaries and honored my vulnerabilities. I had been too open with Emma, too quick to believe that someone who appeared to care about me wouldn't harm me. But that was a lesson I had to learn the hard way, and it had shaped the way I approached my friendships and relationships moving forward. A few weeks into the new semester, I received an unexpected message from Emma. It wasn't a long one, but it was enough to make my heart race. Babe, I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, but I just wanted to say I'm really sorry. I was selfish, and I hurt you, and I regret it. I'll respect whatever you decide, but I hope we can talk when you're ready. I miss our friendship. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart heavy with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to reply, wanted to open that door again and see if we could rebuild what had been broken. But another part of me knew that it wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about the boundaries I had set for myself, the growth I had achieved, and the lessons I had learned. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I could go back to the person I was before Emma's betrayal, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I took a deep breath and set my phone down. I had worked so hard to get to this point, to heal from the hurt, and to rebuild my sense of self-worth. I couldn't let one message undo all of that. As much as I appreciated her apology, as much as I understood that she regretted her actions, I knew that opening the door to the past would only hold me back from moving forward. A week later, I replied to her message. I appreciate your apology, but I think it's best if we don't continue our friendship. I've moved on from what happened, and I need to keep moving forward. I wish you the best, Emma. I sent the message and immediately felt a sense of relief. There was no bitterness, no anger in my response, just acceptance. I had finally come to terms with the fact that some people weren't meant to stay in my life, no matter how hard it was to let them go. I had done the work to heal, to forgive myself, and now, I was ready to focus on the relationships that mattered. As the semester came to a close, I found myself feeling lighter, more at peace. I had spent the last few months investing in friendships that nourished me, in people who respected me and supported my growth. I had made a conscious effort to prioritize my own well-being, and it had paid off. I felt confident, centered, and ready for whatever came next. I wasn't perfect, but I was learning to embrace the person I had become through all of it. The person who knew her worth and knew the importance of setting boundaries to protect her heart. I spent more time with my family, enjoying their company without the weight of past betrayals clouding my judgment. My relationship with them had always been a source of comfort and support, and I realized that they were my true foundation. In them, I found the kind of love and trust that I had always longed for, the kind that wasn't contingent on anything other than mutual respect and care. That summer, after graduation, I found myself at a crossroads, but this time, it was a positive one. I was no longer the person who had been broken by betrayal. I was someone who had learned from the past and was determined to make choices that aligned with my values. I moved to a new city, started a new chapter, and focused on my career. I didn't let the fear of being hurt again hold me back from forming new relationships, but I was careful, aware of the lessons I had learned. I didn't give my trust easily, but when I did, I made sure it was with people who earned it. One day, a few months after I had settled into my new life, I ran into an old friend, Lily, from college. We hadn't spoken much since graduation, but when we saw each other, it was like no time had passed. We grabbed lunch and talked about everything, from the struggles of starting a career to our personal lives. It felt good to reconnect, and in that conversation, I realized how far I had come. "You know, I'm really proud of you," Lily said as we finished our meal. "You've been through a lot, but you've come out stronger. You're not the same person you were before." I smiled, grateful for her words. It's been a journey, but I think I've finally figured out who I am. I'm no longer going to let someone else's mistakes define me. I'm moving forward, and I'm doing it for me. She nodded, her smile wide. "And that's the most important thing. You're not the same, but you're better for it." I left lunch that day feeling a sense of pride I hadn't experienced before. I wasn't perfect, and I didn't have all the answers, but I had come through the other side of a difficult chapter stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who I wanted to be. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for it. I was free from the past, free from the toxic relationships that had held me back, and free to move forward with confidence. I had learned to trust again, but not in the way I had before, not blindly, not without caution. I had learned the value of boundaries, of self-respect, and of knowing when to walk away. And most importantly, I had learned that my happiness was not tied to anyone else's approval. It was mine to create, and I was ready to embrace it.